the EU for the next 6 months. They have dictated the agenda. It's a good agenda. Amongst the points of that agenda is dealing with the Western Balkans and the issues that have not been resolved there, most notably that of Kosovo. But the Slovenes show us that if you want to do it, if you want to chair the big meetings, if you want to be at the top table, you can do it. And no doubt in the years ahead we will see the likes of Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, hopefully, the whole of the Western Balkans also being in the EU too. And I do find it passing strange that a country like Scotland with 5 million people is not there at all. Also, just a passing comment at this conference, I was the only parliamentarian from the UK there. Ireland's delegation had 7 members of the Dáil and 2 members of the Irish Senate and 3 members of staff from the Irish Parliament there. Why? Because they understand that if you play a direct role, if you turn up, if you speak with your colleagues from other countries, you can pursue your national interests in cooperation with others. Unfortunately, the UK doesn't quite have that reputation. It's somewhat better than when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, swinging her handbag at meetings. It's not the way the EU works. The Irish have learned that you have to be there, you have to take part, you argue your corner, and you win advantages for your country. And Ireland, a country of 3.5 million people, has done that spectacularly. Ireland is now, Irish Republic is now richer than the United Kingdom. And ironically, I now sit in the House of Commons in the row just in front of colleagues from Northern Ireland, from the Unionist side of the fence. And interestingly, hearing them argue that they want Northern Ireland to have the same tax rates as the Irish Republic because they have been so successful and they're having unfair competition from the South. 10, 15, 20 years ago, the Irish Republic would have been described as a basket case. They have shown us the way, whether Ireland or Slovenia, the place to be is at the top tables. We need to be engaged in the international community there, because there is, the independence of the 21st century is not that of the 19th century. We live in an interdependent age where we do need to cooperate on the environment, we do need to cooperate on immigration, on a single market, and the free movement of people. We need to embrace these things and make the most of them. We have to do that from within the European Union. And then there's the United Nations. If we are to have any hope in the future at a time of global instability, we have to support international law, to have the parameters within which the international community operates. And I want to see Scotland as part of that. That means that we uphold international law, we don't break international law, and by that I mean we are not part of undertakings such as the invasion of Iraq, something that is not sanctioned by the United Nations. And at the same time, there is a commitment that you have to uphold by being part of the United Nations and the international community, and that is that you take your responsibilities seriously. So the UN says we need peacekeeping troops in some parts of the world, you have to be prepared to commit to that, and I am certainly prepared for Scotland to do that. Last up, in terms of being engaged with the international community, is common security and defence arrangements. At the present time in Europe, we're particularly bad at working together. I applied what I call the Srebrenica test to where we are with things. You may remember during the horrific civil wars in Yugoslavia, the Bosnian Serbs massacring 7,000 civilians in Srebrenica while the Dutch United Nations troops were standing by, did nothing to intervene. It was a shame for Europe, a shame for all of our countries, because we did nothing collectively to stop that attempted genocide of our own indigenous European Muslims. And I think that is the test for me against which we need to measure our cooperation with other countries. So undoubtedly in the years ahead, we are going to see greater cooperation between especially European nations on deployments, on procurement, on common formations. You see common military formations between the Benelux countries, between Germany and France. And no doubt with independence, there would be significant cooperation between Scotland and our continental colleagues, but also with those on the rest of these islands. And we need to be a part of that. In terms of defence and security at the moment, where Scotland is that we're seeing a rundown of our armed forces in Scotland, the amalgamation, the disbandment of our regiments by the UK government. We're seeing an unprecedented series of closure of bases and facilities. We've got a procurement deficit, i.e. as taxpayers here in Scotland we pay more in to the Ministry of Defence in London than we get back in terms of procurement. And for me, the biggest deficit of all, we have no power to decide whether we send our young men and women into conflict or not. For our guests from outside the UK, a notion which would just be completely and utterly unacceptable. The idea that a parliament somewhere else would say, you're sending your guys into conflict, they will fight and die for something that you're not actually in agreement with. Completely unacceptable. Now that's something that we have thulled in Scotland. We think of our regiments currently in Iraq. The majority of people in the Scottish Parliament were against it, even in Westminster. And public opinion has always been opposed. So, another reason why we need power to ensure that we are directly represented in the world. And the last theme I want to conclude on is this notion of national interest and the general good. What I want Scotland to be in the world is visible, to be there, not an add-on, not there in just a cultural role, or because sometimes in a UK context there is a minister from Scotland, or there is occasionally something in passing reference to Scotland. I want Scotland to be wherever and whenever we choose to be there. We should be part of the world, we should be visible, we should be imaginative. We should support the things that we want to support in imaginative ways. That's what small countries do. We need to be nimble and quick to get the best out of the opportunities that the international community offers. So, I think we have to ask ourselves in conclusion, how is Scotland viewed internationally at the moment? Perhaps something easier for our friends from outside these shores. But if you look in foreign policy terms, Scotland is a nuclear haven at the moment. Our troops are in Iraq. We have been part of whole-scale intransigence within the European Union for a long time. And we have failed to engage internationally directly. Is that really what we want to be known for? Is that the best that we can do? I don't think so. Because I think we can do something much better than that, but it involves taking responsibility for ourselves. It involves us aspiring to make the world a better place. So on the one hand, prosperity and fairness at home, but supporting peace in the world. And to do that, we need to be independent. Thank you very much.
At this stage, we'll take a few questions for about an hour or so. First person, Dante.
Yeah, thanks a lot, first of all, for speaking. I understand a lot of your points, and I think a lot of people would agree with them. Certainly, opposition to Trident, the integration from the European Union, Scotland as an honest broker in the world. What I don't understand, however, is how any of those things would be helped by independence, per se. Especially, things, for example, like Scotland operating from the European Union. And certainly you can say there is a Council of Europe meetings, just like SNP support in the form of Gordon Brown. That's what I'm interested in hearing.
Okay. Do you mind if I sit down while answering these questions? I can bob up and involve them. Well, first there's a functional answer to your question, which is, if Scotland's interests are not to have Trident, we have to have the power to make that decision. We don't have the power to make that decision at the moment. That power resides at Westminster. And the point I was making in my remarks was that the majority of MPs at Westminster voted against it. The majority of members of the Scottish Parliament voted against it. But the fiat